Hey, my name is Shiv. I'm a survivor of child abuse and some pretty bad bullying when I was in grade school, and I am thriving now. I do EMDR every week to heal complex post-traumatic stress disorder. This video is going to be focused on kind of a series of epiphanies I had just regarding how I approach the world in terms of resentment. Mostly in terms of resentment of what happened to me. Like, I go outside and I'm just angry all the time, just this rage that's constantly there, and it's like none of you ever none of you will ever understand what the abuse I went through was like. Just that's how I approach the world, and it leads to a lot of anger and just keeping people away, and this mindset of like, the only person you can only really love me if you like really understand every minute detail of the abuse that I went through. And I just had an epiphany that like there's no way I can ever make anybody fully understand, because that's my experience, and actually that's not anybody's job. I would do this with my girlfriend, just kind of this mindset of like, oh, if she's really the one for me, then she needs to really be able to dive into the abuse with me and fully understand it and empathize with it, and understand what's going on underneath the surface. And I think I've approached the relationship from that point of view for some time, and it's not healthy. It's really just kind of left me. I'll like make up kind of excuses to kind of keep distance. That's that avoidant attachment, and it doesn't really work well. It also works out with just generally like work and friends. Like at work, I would think like, oh yeah, like I deserve this thing because I went through this abuse, and like now I'm just as capable as everybody else, so you better give it to me. Or like, because I went through that, I deserve this thing. And it's kind of this sense of entitlement that comes out of not like having kind of been deprived when I was a kid, especially with regards to my relationship with my dad. He was very physically violent with me, and I think the mindset, when I was growing up, he would often give things to my sister and not me. One of the memories that really stuck out in my mind was I asked my mom for a spoon one time. I was just sitting at the dining table, and my mom was right next to the spoon. So my mom goes to grab it, and my dad's like, no, you get up and go get it yourself. So that's kind of the level of deprivation. It's just such a random thing. Like, he would also like slap me and hit me and, that stuff. But, it's just kind of a deprivation, and I had to grow up kind of on my own. I do internally feel like a wild animal. And that's kind of how I feel around a lot of people. I kind of approach with the mindset of like, these people won't understand what I've been through, and I'm a different species of sorts, and like, I need to kind of keep people at arm's length. But I'm kind of realizing like, it's nobody else's job to, well, I guess it's kind of this idea that like, if somebody fully understands, then their love will be there, and that'll finally heal me, and finally I can do something with the trauma. It's kind of just this recursive thing of like, I could leave the trauma behind, but then what does that mean about the trauma? And like, I'm just trying to search for meaning in something that was like, there's one level of meaning of like, it was just my parents, and they really were damaged people, and they couldn't accept a pure love from a child, so they lashed out in the way they did. But then I try and find an even deeper meaning, and it's like, oh, because I went through this trauma, I'm gonna be this person that like solves this big problem in society. And it's like, when I start weaving those stories that are really kind of resentment based, that's when it's dangerous. And I start thinking like, nobody will ever understand, and I kind of get wrapped up in this dramatic story in my mind, and I'm learning to let that go, and I guess in a sense compartmentalize the trauma. Like, it's a really shitty thing that happened in the past. It continues to affect me to some extent today, but I don't want to let the fact that I was deprived as a kid prevent me from having a wonderful life today. Because the reality is, like, I'm gonna go get my PhD at Harvard. I have a wonderful girlfriend who's really supportive. She might not fully understand everything that I went through, and that's not her job, and that's okay. It's more like, instead of me thinking, what can she give me? She needs to give to me. It's like, well, I love her for who she is. She has her flaws too, but like, she's a fantastic person, and we can just enjoy each other, and I can be supportive of her, and she can support me too. Um, yeah, there's really, yeah, the more I hang on to that resentment, the more I kind of keep myself stuck in the past. And I think at a certain point, it's just like, just that grief of, it was a really shitty thing that happened. And I guess life goes on, really. Yeah, it's hard. It makes me think of Nietzsche, who talks about like how people invent God in order to try and justify a lot of the horrible things that happen in the universe. And that religion is kind of an opiate for them, a way to make things justified. And I'm not very religious, and I don't have positive opinions on religion. Um, but you would engage in the same thing if you take your trauma and you try and constantly ask why and try and extract some deeper meaning out of it. And it's like, well, at a certain point, it's just kind of a shitty thing that happened. And I think you can't base your identity around that, otherwise you're just gonna stay stuck in your own hell. So yeah, nobody will ever understand, and that's okay.